Before our session, Mr. Deren from TRT was telling us that there's, 70, 80 shows all being made every week. Give us your perception of the process.
Well, first of all, a Turkish pre-production is very unique to itself. I mean, right now we have a lot of coverage, so I mean, a lot of people are watching and a lot of people actually know about what we do, but the backstage is very specific to our own country. I mean, even if I told you everything about it, it would take actually somebody to actually go there and experience for himself what exactly is going on in there. But there are a couple of milestones that we go through. First of all, obviously, you have to find a script. That usually comes from the production. About 99% of stories, I mean, I'm just making the numbers up, but most of the stories that are being created are actually commissioned by the production. They have an idea, or they have a story, they have something that they actually hand on to you, and you work with that. So that starts with the production, and then you have this really long process of getting the script, not just dramatically, but acceptable in terms of the TV culture, in terms of the popular culture, and those are very strict guidelines. We're a country that socially, politically, we have to jump a lot of hurdles to get that script acceptable for the sector. So that's pretty much the hardest part, actually. And after that comes the pre-production part of all of us actually working together. Some writers are not that involved in the pre-production process, but if you have like Magnificent Century, if you have like an epic like Ezel, the writer pretty much works as a showrunner, but informally. I mean, he or she wouldn't have the formal authority, but he or she would be listened to. And we, in all the works that we do, are very involved in that process, from casting to everything, to the production design and everything. So there is the part that the producer and the writer work together. Usually, not always, for example, Magnificent Century is a very good exception. The director comes later, at a much later stage, and then he's involved. But the thing with the Turkish sector is that since we have such little time for this really huge, endeavor in front of us, most of what we do is spontaneous. It has to be, and I think that's where the success of the Turkish sector comes, because not just while we write TV, as we live, we have to be very spontaneous. I mean, Turkish culture, someone who lives in Turkey has to be ingenious just living. He has to make up ways to actually, bypass hindrances, all kinds of things. I mean, if you're in traffic for an hour, you really have to be very spontaneous and patient and flexible. That's the part that the Turkish people actually do well. And it's through that spontaneity that we can create this miracle of not, it's a miracle that these things are actually good. It's a miracle enough that they're being made. I mean, an actor is remembering lines that he just read maybe a day ago, and they're like 80 pages of lines. A writer is writing within that week, in 4 days or 5 days, 120 pages. So the way the Turkish people actually make movies and TVs is the way is the way we live, really.
It must. They say that art reflects life, so why not?
Yeah, it's hectic.
But the process, I believe, is that the show's already on air, and you're writing the sort of like the episode that's going to be on air in 2 weeks' time, kind of thing.
That's pretty much the case. It has to be. I mean, there is no way that you can pre-program all of this. I mean, part of that is because of the system as well. It's not a system that guarantees, as in U.S., for example, a season, and then you can actually pay for the whole season and get it done with. You have to actually see that as it comes as well. So everything that we do, we're usually, thinking just 2 weeks ahead, if we're lucky.
But I want to add something.
Sure.
I want to learn if you agree with me. But the productions, the TV series, this disease, let's say, that Turkey produced and famous in all over the world, they all have a good pre-production time.
I'm sure
very
they do,
good
yeah.
pre-production time. I mean, he's telling that the normal dizi life in Turkey. That's right. Yes, we all live that. Something happens just at the moment, and we have to create something. Sure. But the most famous ones in the world are all well done, well worked, and most of them prepared as a story from the beginning till the end before they start to shoot. So
I'll add something to that. I mean, that's given. That's obviously true without exceptions. Add to that, in our country, different departments don't usually interact with each other a lot. For example, actors don't interact a lot with writers. Writers don't interact a lot with directors. These are usually very specifically circled departments that the producer kind of gets this thing going. In almost all successful shows, there's a really good interaction. I mean, I know in Magnificent Century that's the case.
Agreed.
In 20 Minutes, I think that was the case. In Ezel, that was absolutely the case. Everybody was in that table sitting in together. I mean, I think that's the thing with TV series. We watch a story, and that's important, given, but we also watch an organism. And that organism is in our houses. It's there every day. So that organism has to function as a whole. When we do that, and I guess that has to do with preparation too, when we interact within each other, that also makes it a good show.
And what I find interesting is when we talk to people from this industry from all over the world, when we say them, as she says, we're shooting like 120 minutes per episode, and like, for example, let's talk about hours. I don't know how many episodes did you do in 20 minutes, but like 139 episodes in 4 years. They cannot believe that. So, I mean, that's the point. We work hard. We really work hard. We are creative at that moment, and the moment. So that makes spontaneously happiness and life in that show. But they're all hard work, and all people who are working in TV series in Turkey, they're all giving from their private life to the job. So it goes that way.
That's really true.
The thing that Kerem, you mentioned about everyone being in the room together and sort of just living it, and the product that comes out of that. Tell me about how that marries together with the writer's room that is the model of writing that's very popular in the US, that churns out all the shows that they do. Kerem, you're trying to bring that writer's room model into Turkey, I think. Tell us about that.
It's a tough process. Because it really goes against what's going on in the Turkish TV sector. But so that's in the making. Right now, it's easy to summarize. It's hard. But I strongly believe. I think as a TV sector, we've come to a stage where we've peaked. This is my personal belief. I don't know if maybe a producer or an actor might think differently, but I think we've peaked to a place where we were actually, honorary guests of Mipcom, for example. That's this huge thing. To go from here to an even more international level, it's not going to happen locally. I think it's going to happen in two ways. One, not just a couple of really big players, but from the bottom, actors and writers have to interact in some way internationally with other actors, with other directors and producers in the international communities, and that has to come from down here, from the creators themselves. That hasn't been established, but I think it will be. And secondly, there's going to be an international urge, I'm sure, that's going to change the way Turkish TV series are going to be made. I don't know if that's going to happen today or a year from now, but it's bound to happen. Because as the world is changing, and I'm not sure if Turkey is realizing this yet. I mean, not if everybody is realizing this yet. But I think we're in such an international stage that we're also going to be led and guided by the international community as well. I think that's to come. That's to come very soon.
Okay.